Thank you. Go, please. Thank you.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, Your Majesty, I welcome you this evening on behalf of the American people, and in particular, on behalf of the people of my home state of California. We're honored by your presence in our country and in this state. It's fitting that this evening's banquet should be held in this place and in this city. The DeYoung Museum is one of America's great cultural landmarks. And thanks to Her Majesty's graciousness, we will soon have Leonardo da Vinci's horse drawings, some 50 of them, from the Royal Library of the Windsor Castle that will be touring the United States. And from November 1985 through February of '86, they will be on view in the California Palace of the Legion of Honor. And the tour was organized by the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, the National Gallery of Art of Washington, and the Art Institute of Chicago. That particular tour and this cultural landmark that we're in tonight reflects the diversity of our people who've built a unique nation from many cultures on the firm foundations of democracy and law, which in large measure we inherited from Britain. It represents a dedication we share with our British cousins, the peaceful furtherance of art and science for the enrichment and progress of all mankind. It's also appropriate to recall that in a special way, San Francisco, which has become home to so many different people, represents the culmination of our nation's great wartime alliance. Of course, the local links to Great Britain go back much further. One of the first titled tourists to visit this area, Sir Francis Drake, arrived long before the city did. Not only was there no room at the inn, there was no inn. But its greatest hours came centuries later. In August of 1941, President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill set down in the Atlantic Charter their hope to see established a peace which will afford to all nations the means of dwelling in safety within their own boundaries, and which will afford assurance that all the men in all the lands may live out their lives in freedom from fear and want. And almost 4 years later, in this city, America, Britain, and 44 other nations formed the United Nations Organization as a means of putting those great principles of the Atlantic Charter into practice. Unhappily, subsequent events have continued to put our values and our ideals to the test. We have seen continued war, terrorism, and human oppression in too many quarters of the globe. We're challenged to restrain and reduce the destructive power of nuclear weapons. Yet we must maintain our strength in the face of the enormous military buildup of our adversaries. And nationally and internationally, we face the challenge of re-stimulating economic growth and development without rekindling inflation. All this we can do. We will find the strength to meet these dangers and face these challenges because it beats within the hearts of free societies and free men. We need to only look about us for inspiration. This beautiful city and this great state testify to the power and the vision of free men inspired by the ideals and dedication to liberty of John Locke, Thomas Jefferson, John Stuart Mill, and Abraham Lincoln. In the words of a great American and warm friend of Britain, Franklin Roosevelt, the only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. So let us move forward with strong and active faith. And ladies and gentlemen, happily and conscious of the honor that is ours tonight, I ask you to join me in a toast to Her Majesty the Queen. To the Queen.
Mr. President, thank you for the very kind things you have said tonight. It is only 9 months since we had the great pleasure of having you and Mrs. Reagan to stay with us at Windsor. Now we have had the memorable experience of visiting you in your home state of California and of seeing your ranch at Santa Barbara. I knew before we came that we had exported many of our traditions to the United States, but I had not realized before that weather was one of them. But, Mr. President, if the climate has been cool, your welcome and that of the American people has been wonderfully warm. We are very grateful for your charming hospitality and for the generous reception we have had everywhere since our arrival in California last week. The past few days have been a vivid and sometimes poignant reminder of the human drama and achievement which account for the greatness of America today. We have seen some magnificent technological achievements. The space shuttle, which has begun to turn the adventure of space exploration into the equally adventurous but more tangible reality of scheduled space travel. Silicon Valley, which has brought the world of yesterday's science fiction into today's home, office, and classroom, and into Buckingham Palace too. This image of the United States at the forefront of technical invention is one of which you are rightly proud, as we are proud of our continued inventiveness in an era of pressing competition. But the miracle of the space shuttle or of the silicon chip lies not in the wizardry of electronics, but in the genius and sheer dedicated determination of men and women. That is what speaks loudest in California. I think of the families who struggled against impossible odds, leaving their dead in places whose names still bear witness to their desperation to make their way to the West Coast. In today's prosperity, their fortitude is often overlooked, but it is their character and courage which have permeated each succeeding generation. I have seen that courage at work for myself this week, as many Californian families have coped valiantly with the hardship brought by the storms and tornado which have hit this state so hard. Prince Philip and I made a memorable visit to your country in 1976 to share with so many Americans in the celebration of your bicentenary. 1983 marks another bicentenary, the signing of the Treaty of Paris, formally bringing the War of Independence to an end. 2 years before that, British troops had marched to surrender at Yorktown to the tune of The World Turned Upside Down. So it must have seemed to men at that time. But what would our world 200 years later be like if theirs had not been turned upside down? Since then, the hand of friendship has reached out from your shores and ours at critical periods in our history to ensure not just our own survival, but the survival of freedom itself. In 1939, my father was the first reigning British sovereign to visit America, and he and President Roosevelt talked long and earnestly about the coming crisis. At the end of their visit, Mrs. Roosevelt wrote that in time of danger, as she put it, something deeper comes to the surface, and the British and we stand firmly together with confidence in our common heritage and ideas. By far the most important idea which we share is our belief in freedom, as you made clear in your speech at Westminster last year. It is an idea whose power is such that some men will go to as great lengths to suppress it as others will to keep it alive, as our two countries have fought to keep it alive. We are deeply grateful for the unstinting contribution of the United States to the maintenance of the Western Alliance. For our part, no one who knows the British and their history could have any doubt about our steadfastness as an ally or our willingness to stand up in defense of the values which we all hold dear. I say that not to strike a solemn note, but to state a simple truth. We have had a visit which has been spectacular and has fulfilled a long-standing ambition on my part to visit California and the West Coast. What better time than when the President is a Californian? We have enjoyed ourselves and greatly appreciate the warmth of your hospitality. What will remain afterwards is more significant: the cementing of a relationship. From time to time, friendships must be publicly reaffirmed. My visit has given me the opportunity to reaffirm the ideals which we share and the affection that exists between our people, without which the formalities of alliance would be meaningless, but from the certainty of which our two countries continue to draw strength. Mr. President, I raise my glass to you and to Mrs. Reagan, to the friendship between our two countries, to the people of California, and to the people of the United States. Mr. President.
President.
The first ever address to the joint houses of Congress by a British sovereign, in a republic that became independent by armed revolution against her great-great-great-great-grandfather, George III, 2 centuries ago. It is a nerve-wracking occasion.
Yeah, I see.
And if you wanted to try that little thing at the beginning, ma'am, people I've talked to seem to think it would be a very good icebreaker.
Uh-huh.
And I would suggest before you say anything at all,
Yes.
when you go up there, you see, you go straight to the podium, and I'll give you your speech as you
And
stand
wait
there.
there.
And you wait there for the welcome which comes from above, from the speaker who's sitting above you. And it is going to be built for you and not for anyone else this time. Our chap Ralph is next door. I'll go and ask that question, ma'am.
Yes, that would be very kind. Not something that I would ever have actually thought about beforehand, you know? The podium.
Of course, one forgets the president's quite tall.
Well, he's huge, really. He's very tall.
Ma'am, I've got Richard Ralph here from the embassy, who can actually talk to you every step of the way from the moment you get into the chamber.
No, I just wondered, because I presume I have my back to everybody, don't I? I mean, I have my back to the people who are actually going to start.
You do. Would you like me to start from the moment you walk into the chamber?
No, because, I mean, somebody walks one in.
You'll be preceded down, and there will probably be congressmen who will lean out. They may well want to reach out to shake your hand as you proceed down towards the podium. And there will be an enormous amount of applause going on. And eventually that will die away, and then that is the moment for you to start your speech. I'm told there will be many interruptions.
Nice
Friendly
ones, I hope.
Friendly ones, yes, absolutely. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, His Royal Highness the Duke of Edinburgh.
I do hope you can see me today from where you are. Well, if you take a cup, we'll find some decaffeinated coffee. I hope. Do you have any decaffeinated coffee?
It's just coming through. John says it'll bring it through himself.
Thank you. It's coming.
Oh, well.
I mean, we try our best. It's coming.
Is that decaffeinated?
No. This is ordinary.
This is for Queen.
Well, wait.
This is just coffee. Yeah, it is. It's coming.
Decaffeinated.
But you know what? I think he's getting...
Now we'd like to meet the president.
Which one?
It's amazing how much metal they put in. I have to carry a car to get through the airport secured.
So yours sounds off.
Yes.
Mine must be more deep-seated because mine doesn't sound off.
I'm finding great comfort in the fact that even though it rained on the Queen today, it actually rained on the Pope when he was in Miami too.
Right.
So we're accustomed to showing our blessings on people by raining on them.
Now, if you've got 2/3 of the fund paying for the bureaucrats to give only 1/3 to the needy people, something's wrong there.
But you see, all the democracies are bankrupt now because, because of the way that the services have been planned for people to grab.
Well, I know we tried to get some of these things changed and reduce them. But, for example, we've got a rule that still to this day that a supervisor's salary is based on the number of people he supervises. Well, now,
Really?
you've got a group of people there that have no interest in reducing the payload, even if they can, because it'll reduce their salary.
Obviously, yes. It's extraordinary, isn't it, how... I mean, I think the next generation are going to have a very difficult time.
Ah, il vient par là pour la photo. Oh. Avancez, goddamn. Avancez. Putain, quand il est con le ton gendarme là. Ah, il vient pas à la photo tout de suite? Vous voulez faire la photo? Comment il s'appelle le gars qui a la veste bleue aussi, le gendarme? Le gars qui est devant, là, il se met cap.
Where did you buy this?
Oh, they got your leg. I'm watching that.
You really put a lot of pressure on those, you can get that bender. I used to take a shoe off it.
Oh.
Ouais, la lumière, elle est bonne, les lumières.
Go out here. Here we go.
Out here, out here. Straight up.
C'est ça, Miterand, il est toujours derrière.
Yeah, we'll get you all together.
Thank you.
Okay, Jimmy. Well, yeah, let him go inside.
We gotta get going here. That's it, kill it, unplug it.
Well, that's a good rehearsal. Now we know what's happening. It's a real pizza. Well, he may live, you know, his house may be very close. He doesn't have all the elaborate security the rest of them anyway.
No.
Enough people around him.
Yeah, you got it. You got Just bring him to this point.
That's good, because I don't have a long thing. That and cavalier attitude.
You've been there since yesterday?
The dinner of the South. Again? I don't know whether Louisiana.
Well, it must be, because they've got something Cajun. Yes, Cajun. Cajun
You noticed it?
He can get a replacement right there.
I am the earth, a place you call Virginia. Rivers flow across me to a bay and a great ocean. I teem with life. For 10,000 years, people have lived along my shores. They called this place Chesapeake. They learned to share my gifts. They lived and danced, hunted and sang, farmed, fished, and traveled along the Chesapeake. And they still do. From across the ocean came another people. Their dances, songs, farms, boats, even their skin was different. They brought with them their language, their customs, and their beliefs. They called their land across the ocean England and Britain, but they came here to stay. At times, they worked and ate with the first people. At times, they battled. They established self-government here, in this place. More and more of these people came, transforming my rivers, my forests, my fields. They brought another people too. They brought them by the tens of thousands. These people came enslaved against their will. Their labor made my fields lush with new riches. The sons and daughters of Africa brought their own traditions. And here, among the first people and the English, along my fertile shores and among my plants and animals, all my people created a new culture. The new people spread across the fields and forests, moving from sunrise to sunset. They inherited from across the ocean a sense of responsibility, of self-reliance, and self-government. They demanded liberty, at least for some. But liberty could not be granted to just a few. My people struggled to fulfill the promise of liberty for all, to free those in bondage, to build a nation of people who share a belief in the rule of law, the dignity of man, and freedom for all. The people of my land did not forget their ties across the ocean. When freedom was threatened, Britons and Americans joined forces. In victory, they rejoiced in their common heritage. For the next half-century, in times of dark fear and of joyful songs, the people separated by an ocean celebrated their special bond.
But the fundamental concepts which have inspired both the United States and the nations of the Commonwealth are the same. As between individuals, freedom, honest dealing, tolerance, and justice under the rule of law.
What has changed in these last 50 years? The Commonwealth of Nations has extended the promise of democracy and the rule of law across the globe. Culture, art, and music travel the ocean at the speed of sound. Together, our people work for peace and security around the world and to expand the influence of democracy. After decades, we rejoiced as the peoples of Europe were reunited.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The simple stone and iron tools people once used have given way to powerful technologies. Trade and communications have grown across borders, across oceans, making the globe seem much smaller, making it easier to share. Now, the connections between civilizations across continents and oceans are obvious to all peoples. Now, the commitment to democracy and the rule of law, a commitment shared by Britons and Americans, is more important than ever. Today, the descendants of those who lived here among the melting glaciers, of those first daring English who came to stay, of the Africans and all those who faced the dangers of the sea and of a world new to them. Today, their descendants remember those who came before them. They changed